All right, welcome everybody. Today we're going to go over the remarkable benefits of fasting. Okay, this is a topic that I'm super passionate about and has a lot of implications for life as a whole. Okay, my intention of today is to be brief, not go too deep into the scientific side of things, but really leave you with an understanding of how to do fasting, the benefits of it, and what it would look like, in your life. And so that's where we're going to start. And if we have any questions, anything like that, you can submit them after we're finished. So first thing is I'll just share a little bit about myself. My name is Nathan McCullough, and some of you may know me, some of you may not, but I'm the founder of Rising Phoenix Wellness. I'm an integrative nutritionist. I'm a holistic health coach. I am a person who's in long-term recovery, mainly from alcohol. And I'm a recovery coach. So one of my big passions in life is really transforming the global conversation around addiction and by association recovery as well, right? I've used a lot of different integrative practices to help me recover in my own journey. And I'm super passionate about bringing those strategies and practices, let's call them practices, to bear in other people's lives. Because I'm clear that, addiction is something that we all struggle with on a certain continuum. And they're generally behavioral patterns that work for a while and then end up not working because they're used long beyond what we were kind of using them for in the beginning, and we end up being used by them. And so I believe that holistic integrative approaches are things that can support anybody in their health journey. And I'm also a business coach and an entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneurship is something I'm very passionate about, and helping people realize that you can create a business and you can create something based on what you love in life, and you can turn it into something that you can live on, that you can make money with, whether it's full-time, part-time, whatever the case may be. I'm a huge believer that people can be and should be empowered to follow their dreams and create something out of what they love. So today we're going to talk about fasting. Okay. So first thing is to really dispel some of the myths or facts about fasting. So we'll go through a little bit of that information. First one is that you should eat 6 small meals a day, okay? When I went through nutrition school originally, this is what we were told. You never want your metabolism to turn off. And the way that you do that is instead of 3 big meals a day, you can eat 6 small meals throughout the day and make sure that your metabolism is always turned on. And that was the original idea. Every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day, you should do that in order to keep your metabolism turned on and prevent your body into going into starvation mode. The problem with that is that starvation mode doesn't kick in for like 3 days, not for 3 hours. And we'll talk about this as we go on, but this idea of constantly eating has a big impact on keeping our insulin levels and our blood sugar levels and our digestion constantly running, which can have a big impact on our energy levels and on our insulin levels. So here's a different approach, and that is, it's an evolutionary approach, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But we have historically, as humans, gone through these periods of feasting and fasting. We didn't always have grocery stores and convenience stores around the corner, and so in most of our ancestral beginnings, we lived in tribes, and we would go through periods of going out for a hunt or a gathering, bringing food back, eating for a while, and then going through periods of fasting when food wasn't immediately made ready by the mother herself. And so we went through these cycles. And so evolutionarily, biologically, we have a lot of this encoded in our DNA. And so what we're teaching with fasting is kind of a mimicking of that way of being, so that your body can return back to a kind of style of eating, let's say, that it's already biologically encoded into much, much more than the way that we're eating today in the modern world, which is snacking all the time, just constantly eating. So that's where the evolutionary approach comes in, right? Humans are biological creatures, and we largely function evolutionarily. And what that means is there are certain things that are hardwired into our genes, and our cells behave a particular way. Let's just put it that way to keep it kind of surface level. And when we don't follow that genetic programming, there is a big impact. And we're right now with the absolute, let's say, explosion of degenerative diseases, cancer, stroke, heart disease, metabolic disease, stroke. A lot of these things are actually side effects or impacts of not following that evolutionary approach. So first thing let's talk about is glycogen, or blood sugar, because we're going to take this right back to where it all starts, right? The source. We don't want to deal with the symptoms. We want to actually work on the root causes. And blood sugar is actually one of these critical root causes of our metabolic health getting out of whack. Okay. And so easily way to think about it, there's two main ways to get energy: sugar and fat. Glycogen, which is sugar that gets stored in your muscles. Okay. Now, your body is always going to prefer sugar, glucose, as its main energy source. Okay. And what that means is that your body's always going to go searching to burn sugar first, because it's a very fast acting form of energy. Okay. And your brain does need some glucose to function optimally. But your body is always going to default to sugar, glucose. So if we're always resupplying glucose into our bloodstream, then we're never actually converting over to the burning of fat for fuel. Okay. Sugar, very fast acting energy source, burns up really quickly. Therefore, your body feels like it needs more sugar for energy. Okay. Fat, very slow burning energy source, and it can burn for very long periods of time. The analogy I always use is like, if you're thinking about making a fire, right? Sugar is like the kindling, and fat are like the big logs that go into the bottom, right? They can burn for long periods of time. They're slow burning. They can keep you throughout the night, right? If you're only using kindling, which is what you can use to kind of help get the fire going, you're going to be constantly having to replenish the sources of kindling. Okay. So if you think of cravings, right? What that is your body has burned off the sugar, and it has this craving that it needs more, it needs more, it needs more. Okay. What we want to do is break that cycle. And so one way to think about that is adapting to the ability to use fat as energy. Think about what we said before about the evolutionary approach. When we had the old evolutionary approach, the body was in a mode where it was very easily using fat as energy. Why? Because it would go long periods of time where there weren't reintroducing food, and we weren't resupplying the glycogen. So the body had to naturally adapt to using fat as fuel. Okay, so let's think about that. Now, if you think about the modern world that we're in, when we're always adding more and more food, more and more glycogen, what that does is the body loses its biological capacity to use fat as energy, because it never has to. From the time that we're children until we're grown adults, if we keep living this way, our body literally will start evolutionary moving out the ability to burn fat as energy. Okay. And that's where most people are, to be honest. So if you look at a huge explosion of metabolic disease, obesity, things like that, a lot of it is that our bodies have not been adapted to be able to use fat as energy. So that's one of the key things that we're going to be talking about today, and why fasting is so important, because it can return us, and it can return the body's capacity to burn fat. So think about this. Your body will it takes about 6 to 8 hours for your body to burn all of the glucose or the sugar that's in that's in the body, that's in the muscles like that. Okay. That's at the point when your body will start burning fat for energy once you've burnt off all the sugar. Okay, now think about how many hours that you sleep each night. Okay, and it'll make much more sense while we're going to structure the fasting the way that we do, such that by the time you wake up in the morning, right, as long as you're sleeping 6 to 8 hours, which you should be, when you wake up in the morning, you're waking up to a body that's empty of glucose, it's empty of sugar, so it is immediately in the fat burning. So this is really the key. Okay, if you only take one thing away from this presentation, take this with you. The key is metabolic flexibility. We have to teach our body and train our bodies into the ability to use fat as fuel. This is really the ultimate goal, is to become a fat burning machine and having a body that's able to switch back and forth between different fuel sources. Okay. If you only have a diet that focuses on one source of energy, i.e. that's very carb centric, like our diet, you never become naturally good at burning fat. So what is intermittent fasting? A lot of people have heard of that. Okay. Another way to think about that is time restricted eating, meaning you're eating in windows of time. Okay. You're going to have a fasting window and you're going to have a feeding window. Okay. And in the feeding window, that's when you're going to be eating and drinking. And in the fasting window, you're going to be abstaining from eating or drinking most beverages and foods at that time. Okay. So let's just recap quickly. You're going to go through these cycles of feasting and fasting. We're going to restrict the eating window. Okay. We're not going to be focusing on calorie restriction. We're going to be focusing on restricting the eating window. Okay. And this is not a diet. Okay. It's not going to be focusing on what you can and can't have. Okay. We will integrate some of that when it comes to making good, proper, healthy food choices, but it's not a deficit or or something where we're going to be restricting a lot of things. Okay. What we're focusing on is actually creating a lifestyle. And the focus is on how you eat and not so much on what you eat. Okay. Most diets, if you look at them, okay, it's very calorie centric or food centric. And it's you can eat this, you can't eat that. Okay. And there is a place for that. Okay. So I'm not downplaying that. And we will do some of that if you work with us in the Body Love program, or if you work with me individually, whatever the case may be. But this is a component that gets missed by a lot of quote unquote diets. Okay. The beauty of intermittent fasting or time restricted eating is it's a very easy process, very easy to implement. Okay. Which makes the compliance much higher. So how does it work? Very briefly, okay, your pancreas, your body, the most powerful hormone is called insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, okay? It's the message that goes to it's a hormone that sends a message to your brain that you should hold on and store fat, okay? Insulin increases whenever you eat. Okay, the storage of fat is a survival instinct. Okay, your body is very smart. Okay, it has known evolutionary, it knows what to do. If you're in a very high stress situation, is another example, your body will store fat because it thinks that there is a war coming or some sort of survival situation is happening, right? That's why women, for example, if you want to get one of the things that impacts pregnancy, things like that, is if you're in a pressure cooker type of environment, you're under a lot of stress, the body will naturally shut down its reproductive system because it knows that it should not be bringing a new addition into the world, right? The body has incredibly powerful, intelligent adaptation responses built in. So if we look at that inversely, so if when you're eating, insulin is high, insulin is a fat storage hormone, the message is store fat. Okay. So in the inverse, if you aren't eating, blood glucose levels, right, your blood sugar is going to drop, remain lower. Your insulin levels will also drop and remain lower. And as a result, the message goes to your brain that it's okay to resume working, right? It's okay to start burning fat again. And then your body will start burning stored fat as energy. Okay. So your body's very smart. It knows when food is not available, we need to use our own body. We need to use our own fat for energy. Okay. Also an adaptive response. So you can also, when it comes to intermittent fasting, you can couple it with exercise for exponential results. And the reason for that is because not probably what you're thinking, but exercise also has a phenomenal impact on your body in that it makes your organs more sensitive to insulin, which helps you reduce your level of insulin that's in the body, the hormone insulin. Okay. And we've already seen that when insulin levels are stabilized, your body can naturally release weight. So not necessarily about burning fat, but your body gets the message it's okay to release weight. So a lot of research has actually shown that when you do intermittent fasting, right, as another tool to help you reduce insulin resistance, which is what diabetes is, it's what a lot of obesity is, then if you couple exercise and fasting, which both increase insulin sensitivity or decrease insulin resistance, now you have turned your body into a fat burning machine. Okay. Fasting also dramatically increases human growth hormone, which is something that it helps lean muscle growth as well, right? More muscle that you have, the more fat that it takes to burn and keep those muscles going. So the more lean muscle that you can develop, right, the more that you're going to get rid of that unwanted fat and burn calories. Muscle is much better at burning calories than, for example, that's why strength training is often much better at burning burning fat than long periods of cardio. All right, so we're not going to be counting calories. We're going to be controlling them. Okay, and what most diets, mentioned this before, what they're aiming at is reducing or restricting calories by modulating what you eat. Okay, but what they don't keep in mind is when you eat and when and what the impact is of timing on eating. Okay, that's what we're going to bring into the fold. Okay, so along with rebuilding your body's healthy response to insulin, intermittent fasting also helps you limit calories. So it's not that we're throwing the calorie restriction out the window, because you can't get around the fact that if you want to lose weight, you have to consume less calories than you are burning. Okay, that's just a science equation. Okay, but what this process will do is help you reduce the calorie consumption as well by limiting the eating window. It makes that easier. So intermittent fasting is going to help you burn more calories than you actually consume. So let's get into the benefits. Number one, weight loss, right? The primary goal of many intermittent fastings when they first start is weight loss. Okay. That's totally fine. If that's why you're here, it's absolutely phenomenal for weight loss, right? The evidence and testimonials can back this up. But at the same time, it's not a quick fix. Okay. Long-term reduced calorie intake and lowering the insulin levels is what's going to help you manage your weight. So what I mean by that is intermittent fasting, right? We mentioned before, it's more of a lifestyle. It's not something that you necessarily want to just do short term. This is going to help change what's going on in your body long term, so that you turn this into a lifestyle. Okay. Second thing, fat burning, right? We mentioned this before, and it flows on. But when you're fasted to the point of no glycogen stores in your body, then your body turns to fat for fuel. And this change of fuel is important for weight loss and it can also alter your body composition, and it supports your overall wellness, from cardiovascular health to, and we'll go into this more, but the optimization of sleep. If you're not eating past, let's say 7 or 8 p.m., that is the best thing that you can do to sleep optimally. And optimal sleep has a huge impact on weight loss. Keep this in mind. When your digestion is happening, your body cannot get into deep restorative sleep. when all the repair is happening in deep sleep. Digestion is going to disrupt sleep. Okay. So if you go to sleep with food in your stomach and digestion is happening, you will never get into deep sleep. So ultimate goal is that by the time you lay your head down on that pillow, you want digestion to be completed. Okay. So that's one of the added benefits of fasting. Stop eating at 8 so that by the time you go to bed, let's say at 10 o'clock, digestion is complete. Your whole body can shut down the systems and you can sleep very, very deeply, and it can restore your whole system. One of the biggest ways to sabotage your weight loss goals is to eat past 8 p.m. Keep that in mind. Number 3, support for metabolic health. Okay, this is a big one. We mentioned this before in terms of metabolic flexibility. And what we mean by that is the modulation of insulin. So type 2 diabetes, for example, is insulin resistance. All that it means is that your body, the organs in your body are not being receptive to insulin. Okay, it's a lifestyle created disease. And it's also something that you can reverse very simply by following these strategies and being able to control insulin levels through the controlling of blood sugar. So a lot of studies have suggested that intermittent fasting can help support a more normal insulin sensitivity. And that means that their evidence points to that periods of fasting can help maintain balanced insulin levels and support healthy blood sugar outcomes. Okay, so remember, insulin's a fat storage hormone. So if we can decrease our level of insulin, we can also reduce the risk for metabolic disease and trigger the natural release of fat storage. Okay, this is beautiful for that. Number 4, I'm going to try to go through these a little bit quickly without getting into the deep science. But remember that a lot of, as you get into deeper fasting, okay, so aside from weight loss, it also can trigger something called autophagy. Okay, I don't want to get into too much of the science. What that means is self-cleaning. This is an internal detoxification process. So when people choose to fast for non-weight loss reasons, it's usually tied to this, right? Cellular cleansing. And autophagy literally means it literally means self-eating. And what that means is when there's no food in your body will start going out and searching for ways to also get energy sources and optimize its systems. So it'll get rid of all the damaged cells, the things that are not working well, and it will literally get rid of that stuff. So very, very, very powerful cellular cleansing detoxification process. It's also going to recycle a lot of your metabolism and different cells like that. Your body will start stripping away the ones that are not working and it'll rebuild new cells out of these healthier ones. It's an amazing process. The 5th one is better cognitive function. Okay, your brain burns calories, but that doesn't mean that when you're fasting, you will be less acute or cognitively adept, right? It's the exact opposite. Intermittent fasting has incredible ties to energy levels, brain function, cognitive function, and actually reversing atrophy, mental atrophy, meaning you can sustain your cognitive function as aging goes on by being able to improve cognitive plasticity, meaning the abilities of a brain's ability to continue to grow. So this is it, right? New studies have shown that in mice that there has been a dramatic increase of what they call BDNF, which is it's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's simply a protein that promotes the growth of the connection between neurons. Generally, what happens as age happens is that those connections go down, but they do not have to. This is one of the things that we found, that BDNF can be increased by 400 times simply by incorporating intermittent fasting. The last thing, the 6th thing is actually mindfulness, right? So this relationship to your body. And a lot of diets make you so obsessed about food that becomes the focus. And with fasting, because the food is not there, what is allowed to emerge, right, is natural hunger, cravings. These things start to come to the surface, and you can actually start dealing with what's there and what might be underneath of that. So it allows for this really beautiful space to open up, where you can actually start getting connected to your body once again and begin to discover what you're actually hungry for, right? Is it connection? Is it love? These types of different things. So if you just think for yourself, right? I think if you look, a lot of the food choice, the food choices that we make are made out of our adherence to time, right? A lot of times we look at the clock and it says, 2:00. And then we say to ourselves, oh, it's 2:00, I'm hungry. It's like, really? So this relationship between time and food can be severed such that your relationship to hunger is what's actually going on in your body, right? So this is actually very, very powerful in a way that you can really only experience and discover when you're in the fasting process. It will also, when you do fasting, you have to come to grips a little bit with your cravings and the emotional side of food and eating. So a lot of that stuff will actually come to the surface in the beginning of the fasting process, and you can learn how to navigate and really deal with a lot of those emotional things that come up. This allows for very deep healing to happen during the fasting process, which is why you'll see almost every major, religious tradition in history has an element of fasting involved for a lot of different reasons, but this kind of spiritual component is one of them. So when it comes to discovering your authentic hunger, this is something that I really recommend. Okay. So intermittent fasting doesn't judge food choices. It's important, right? It also helps you to avoid the guilt that comes with making mistakes, right? When you have the metabolic flexibility and you're doing the intermittent, you're doing time restricted eating, a slip up is going to be much less impactful, right? So if you do make a mistake during your eating window, it's not as big a deal, right? Because you're already in a controlled blood sugar environment for the most part. Like we said, it can help you connect to your body. It's also a beautiful time, like I was saying before, to do things like meditation, to do things like journaling, because what you'll notice when you're in a fasted state is there is a very deep sense of peace that comes over you, where you're not as scattered, if you will. Cognitively, you're much more focused. When your body's running on fat instead of sugar, you're much less, you're in a much more stable environment, mentally, with your blood sugar, and also hormonally. It balances your hormones. So this process can allow you to start, if you start journaling, start paying attention to what's going on actually in your thoughts, you can overcome a lot of these limiting beliefs that you have about food. And you can overcome a lot of these emotional connections that happen when food, by simply being present, right? Being mindful of what's happening, and then using, journaling is just an example of a way that you can write that down so you can remain present to it. And it really affords the opportunity to not be controlled by your cravings. All right, so very quickly, how it works. Okay, so we've gone over a lot of the science and the how-to, and the why. The how-to is actually very, very, very easy. You can look at fasting as a separation of feeding window and fasting window, and there are a couple of ways that you can do it. You'll see people 16-8. 18, 6, 24. Okay. The first number is simply the number of hours that you're going to be fasting. The second number is the number of hours that you're going to be feasting. And the longer your fasting window, the deeper the cleanse, the more powerful the results will be. If you're only doing like 12 or 14-hour fasts, chances are you'll get the fat burning element of the fasting, but you're not going to get the deeper cellular cleansing. A lot of the autophagy and the cellular cleansing process that happens when you get into 16, 18, the deeper cleanses. I generally will recommend that people start with either 14 or 16-hour fasts in the beginning and kind of work your way in. Once you get really adept at this, I've been doing intermittent fasting for over 4 years now. I've only missed 1 or 2 days here and there. I can go whole days, 2 days if I want, and I don't get hungry. I don't get cravings, just like that. Like my body, I've trained my body, and then as you're going through this process, you will also start releasing something called ghrelin, suppressing something called ghrelin, which is an appetite hormone. So your body won't just be just releasing this hormone for no reason. So you'll be able to go longer periods of time without having the grumbling, if you will, and a lot of the appetite sensations, which are generally tied to time and emotion. These are just, if you look at historically, a lot of the fasts that have come in the religious tradition, they do at least a 16-hour window. But with Ramadan in particular, right? We lived in Indonesia for a long time, so I saw this a lot firsthand. They fasted during the waking hours, which is much more difficult, right? We are going to recommend that you do, at least 8 of your fasting hours while you're sleeping. So it's actually only a couple of hours while you're, at night before you go to bed, and then a couple of hours when you wake up in the morning. That's why the fasting can be the simplest, most easy to apply and effective change that you can add. Now, there are some differences, I will say that, okay, because of the difference between men and women hormonally. So you want to pay attention for yourself. As women, when you first begin, there's a couple of things that you might want to consider, which is alternative day fasting, meaning you fast one day and don't do it the other. And it just really depends on the person. So if you want to try to jump in and do the fasting every day, just pay attention to your body. If it starts disrupting your cycle or anything like that, pull back and do, alternative day fasting as well. Or, you can pull back on the time a little bit. But there are some differences. Some women report nothing. There's no difference. My wife and her sister, when they first started, they were doing it every day for a while, and it ended up having an impact on their cycles. So you just want to pay attention to those things and listen to your body. And also, when it comes to your thyroid function. Okay, so these are things to consider, and just when you're doing fasting, make sure you're doing it you're working with someone. Last thing is the prolonged fasting. Okay, so there are, once you get really good at doing the intermittent fasting, you can do these prolonged periods of fasting, right? Anything that's over like 36 to 48 hours is what we consider, let's say 24 to 48 hours be considered prolonged fasting. And these are where you take the benefits of fasting and you multiply them, a big time. Okay, so you're going to get these extremely deep cleanses. The cellular repair becomes complete. Like you can literally all change the composition of your body cellularly, and you can, the impact on reversing aging is huge, on brain function, and essentially to get rid of inflammation completely. Right? No inflammation, no chronic disease. So if you can use prolonged fasting to get rid of inflammation, you're also mitigating massively the possibility and the impact of any cancer, stroke, diabetes, heart disease, things like that, right? Fasting can be an incredible tool to use in the anti-inflammatory and anti-chronic disease battle. Now, this, I will say, this should be done with caution. Okay, you probably want to work your way into this, and then if you do a prolonged fast, doing it with the consultation of a professional, right? I've done 5-day, 10-day fasts, and the difference is phenomenal, right? Cognitive function, getting down to very little percent body fat, energy through the roof. But it does come with challenges, right? You got to make sure that your electrolytes are stabilized. There are things that you need to incorporate to be able to do it in a very healthy way. But the effects of prolonged fasting are undeniable, but you should do it with caution. And then when it comes to nutrition for fasting, you want to make sure that you're getting a good bit of fiber in your feeding window. I would recommend taking digestive enzymes to help with the digestion process, and you're breaking down the food in that process, because your digestion will be shut down for a period of time when you're fasting. Adding those digestive enzymes, especially when you're breaking your fast, can be super helpful. A multivitamin is something that's critical. I wouldn't really recommend it without adding the multivitamin to make sure that your body's getting replenishing those vitamins and the minerals and the electrolytes and the things that you need. I would also recommend something to help with the liver cleanse process. Your liver is what is in charge of the breaking down of fat and the releasing of the fat process, as well as your detoxification. So if you get into a deep cleanse and your body's wants to release a lot of the fat, if you have any clog or backup in your liver, it can hinder that process. And during a detox, your liver can also undergo a lot of stress. So I would recommend having something that can help with the liver detoxification process, as well as probiotics. All of the research that is coming out is showing that the relationship between your gut and your brain, you probably heard that, the microbiome that are in your small intestine and your gut there's a lot of messaging, let's say, between your gut and your brain. So a lot of the cravings and the things that you want to eat, it's not actually you making that choice. It's actually the cravings that are making those decisions on behalf of you. And a lot of times those happen in the gut. So if you can actually begin to improve the health and the quality of the microbiome, then you can begin to take a lot of that decision-making process over. And they have shown that if you can optimize your gut microbiome, then the weight loss process becomes much easier. This is kind of a side note, but recently they've done they call them fecal transplants. But what that means is you're actually taking the excrement, let's say, of one person and putting it into another person, which sounds disgusting. But the reason for that is because it actually is related to the gut microbiome. And what they've seen is that if you introduce the fecal matter from a very healthy, fit person into the body of someone who, let's say, is obese, then that person can actually much more naturally transform into a body that is much healthier, because it alters the microbiome, right? Think about it this way. Your microbiome is kind of a memory of what you've been doing in the past, right? So your cravings are a result of what you've been doing in the past. And so if you can change that, it changes the memory kind of that's there from the past, and your brain will start following that. So healthy microbiome, healthy gut, healthy cravings, healthy food choices, easier to create healthy habits. And probiotics can really help in that process. So anyway, I hope that this has been educational. I hope it's been informative. I hope that you feel inspired to try some fasting for yourself. If you have any questions, you can find me on Instagram, Nathan McCullough. You can find me on Facebook. If you know me personally, you can message me on WhatsApp. And also Rising Phoenix Wellness on Instagram as well. So love you guys. Look forward to speaking to you in the future. And if we haven't met yet, I look forward to meeting you soon. Thanks.